We are making 1.31 gigawatts of solar power right here. Well, maybe not gigawatts, but kilowatts. I can power everything in this camper, both air conditioners, at a fraction of the cost of what most of the people are talking about solar on their RVs. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I came up with this, all the places that I found, all my resources, some of them secret and hard to find, everything, right? Jump on in with me and let's talk about how we do solar. I made a video back in 2018 about how we did solar. It was a very unique system back then, but now so much has changed. So before we get into it, I just want to make a note. I purchased all of this equipment myself. I did all the research, and let me just tell you, there is a lot of information out there. I'll share what makes this system worth every penny to us, because it works amazing for us, but there are some drawbacks, and I'll share those with you as well to see if you think they are worth the thousands of dollars that you'll save by doing something like this. All right, so we got a lot to cover in this video, so I'm gonna go pretty fast, all right? So we're gonna start with what we have here. We're gonna jump up on the roof and talk about the solar panels. We have 10 185 watt solar panels. I got these from Santan Solar. So just a note on this, I'm gonna drop my resources as we go, okay? So I'll try to lay them out as we're going. If you need, just hit pause on the video, write these down so that you know them, okay? So I got these from Santan Solar, and I specifically chose these because of their size. If you take a look at my rig here, you got the air conditioners right in the middle, and then we got the solar panels along the side. In order for me to get a ton of solar up here, I did a lot of calculations to try to find the perfect solar panel, and I thought that I did, and I'm pretty happy with what we have laid out here, but I actually learned something really important after I was done, and I'll share that with you a little bit later. So we have 10 solar panels on the top, and I hooked them up in a series parallel connection. So we have banks of 2 solar panels linked together, so we have 5 banks of 2 solar panels. These solar panels are 185 watts, they run about 40 volts and 5 amps. So when you hook 2 together, what you get is 80 volts and 5 amps. So what we end up with all of these solar panels is 1850 watts. The voltage is right around 60 to 80 volts, and the amperage is about 25. So we have 5 banks of 5 amps hooked together in series makes 25 amps. The wiring that I purchased for this was a 10 gauge wire between the solar panels. Those all connect to these multi-panel adapters that allow you to connect many banks together in one. And that goes into one home run that is 8 gauge wire that runs down through a closet and then into the location where we put the inverters and the batteries. Those run into the GrowWatt all-in-one MPPT solar charge controller, battery charger, and 3,000 watt inverter. You'll notice here that I have 2 of them installed, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But then from the GrowWatts, we go over to our battery bank. This is what you would call a DIY lithium battery bank. It's 16 cells, 3.4 volts per cell, 320 amp hours. Now I won't geek out too much, but essentially what this means is that each box is 24 volts, 320 amp hours. So when you put the 2 together, equal 24 volts, 640 amp hours. Now these batteries that I bought here were recommended by Will Prowse, who he's got a YouTube channel, and I will leave it in the description below. But I would say he's probably the best source of DIY and solar stuff that you can find on YouTube, bar none. And it was really cool. He actually stopped by my video that I did back in 2018 and left a comment on there. So it's really cool to see how his channel has grown. I got a ton of information from him and his website and his YouTube channel, and so I will leave all those links below so that you can check them out. I use the BMS that he recommends, which is called Overkill BMS, which is a battery management system. I will tell you, doing this right here with the battery packs probably saved the most money. With this amount of battery, if you were just to take one of these 24 volt batteries, the equivalent would cost you about $5,000 to $6,000. So we have 2 of them here. It'd be between $10,000 to $12,000 just for the batteries right here. If you can, DIYing your batteries and using Will Prowse as a resource will save you a ton of money. Now the Overkill BMS actually has a really cool Bluetooth app, and you can see it here. It actually lists both of the batteries, and it shows what their state of charge is, how much they're either being charged or how much they're being depleted at a certain amount of time. And that actually helps with one of the downsides of the GrowWatt inverter, and I'll share that with you. near the end of the video when we talk about the downsides of the system. So putting these two batteries together, we have 24 volts, 640 amp hours of battery power. Now it's probably a good time to talk about amp hours and watt hours when it comes to batteries. In the other YouTube video that I did about solar, and a lot of the YouTube videos that are out there talking about solar, a lot of people talk about batteries in amp hours. That was pretty good and nice when the common systems were 12 volts. But if you notice, this is a 24 volt system. So when I say 24 volts, 640 amp hours, that actually equates to a 12 volt, 1280 amp hour system. So you can just imagine that this is a very, very powerful battery here with lots of amp hours of power. It's probably better to talk about it in watt hours. So in order to find the watt hours of our system, you essentially take the volts times the amp hours and you get watt hours. So our system will be a 15,360 watt hour battery, or roughly about half the size of the standard off-grid batteries that I've seen. A lot of my research has shown a 30 kilowatt hour battery to be pretty common for like full off-grid systems. So you'll notice the 2-gauge wire that goes between the grow watt and the battery, and that's another reason why I chose 24 volts, is because when you step up higher in voltage, you can actually use smaller wires. So if I were to use a 12 volt system, this wire would have to be double the size essentially. So I liked the fact that the smaller wire was not only cheaper, but it's easier to work with. Okay, so let's talk about installation location. You can see here, this is the back of our RV. This used to be the outside kitchen. Now, we've never really wanted an outside kitchen, but I did like that idea because I wanted to have more outside storage. When I was designing the system, I was going to set it up on the front of the camper and replace the 12 volt system with a 24 volt battery. But instead I opted to leave the whole 12 volt system alone and just focus on creating the 120 or the full power side of the rig, and just get that set up and just leave the house battery, the house charger, and all of that stuff. So we still have the full 12 volt system in this camper, but we run this pretty much day to day. Now, there were some things that I was looking at as far as dropping 24 volts down to 12 volts and all of that stuff, and I just, at the moment, to be honest, I just didn't want to get into it, because once I decided to put the stuff back here, I said I'm just going to leave that alone, and I'm going to essentially be okay with the efficiency loss of still having a charger and a 12 volt system. So this could be a great place for you to chime in if you have any suggestions or ideas on how to essentially link up the 24 volt system to the 12 volt system without having to do too much, right? So one of the problems I have is that this is way back here and that's way up front, so I'd have to run a lot of wires. But anyway, won't get too much into it because I decided to just leave it alone. But if you had any ideas, feel free to drop them in the comments below, because I think it's pretty cool, you know, when people jump in there and we share ideas and all kinds of things. So drop the comments below if you have any ideas. Okay, so you're probably asking, Nick, why do you have two systems here? And the reason that I have two systems is because this camper is a 50 amp camper, okay? So now, in order to explain this better, I'm gonna jump into how the 50 amp campers work. So in the industry, we have a 30 amp camper, and then we step up to the 50 amp camper. Now, the interesting part of it is the 30 amp gives you one leg of 110 volts at 30 amps. When you step up to the 50 amp, you actually get two legs of 110 volts at 50 amps. So what you really have is 100 amps of power available to you when you plug into that 50 amp outlet on the post. And each one of those legs actually comes into your power panel, and your power panel is split. You have one side here and one side there. One side powers a certain amount of things, the other side powers another certain amount of things, and you're essentially borrowing power from each leg as you go. So in order to replicate a full power system, I needed to have two legs set up. So we have one of these powering half of the power panel inside the RV, and we have the other one powering the other half of the power panel inside there. Now, we don't have 240 volts because these aren't tied together. This is an actual off-grid system that you can tie together so they would be in sync, so that you could actually run 240 volt appliances. Now, we don't have 240 volt appliances on RVs, so we don't need to worry about that. What we do have are a couple of pretty large draw appliances like ACs, microwaves, electric water heaters, and so on. So what I ended up doing is reconfiguring my power panel, because there is a downside to these that I had to take care of, but by reconfiguring the power panel, it makes it work just like the more expensive thousands of dollars ones that most of the YouTubers talk about. So what can this system do? Actually, this system can really do everything. We have two 3,000 watt inverters. This system's so powerful, in fact, that it leads me to one of the downsides, which is that if you forget to turn things off, this will just keep running them while you're towing your rig. We actually had a time where we were traveling down the road and we forgot to turn off the air conditioner, but we didn't know because it wasn't running in the morning. But while we were driving, it heated up and the air conditioner kicked on, and when we stopped off for gas, somebody went into the back and said, it's awfully cool inside the camper because the air conditioner is running. And I'm like, oh man, we forgot to turn off the air conditioner. So it can do so much stuff and it doesn't even blink an eye at it. That's how powerful these systems are. And so we have to make sure that we turn off the air conditioners at the thermostat. We have to make sure that we turn off the electric water heater and all that stuff because we don't want to, heat the water as we're driving down the road. We just don't need to. So you're probably thinking, well, Nick, if this can do everything, then why shouldn't I just go out and do something like this myself? So there are a couple downsides, and I'll get to them in a second, but let me just finish with the upsides, and it's probably the biggest one is the price. So for this whole system, all in, with solar panels, batteries, and all of that stuff, I think I'm right around $4,000. Now, if you were to go and you were to look at one of their kits with maybe 400 amp hours of 12 volt power and a 3,000 watt inverter, that is roughly about $10,000 to $11,000 for that system. And if you remember talking about the batteries, in order to match this type of battery, it'd be $10,000 to $12,000 just for the battery alone. So when we talk battery, inverters, solar panels, all the wires and all that stuff, that is an absolute steal. But it does come at a price. So let me explain what some of the downsides are. Like I said, you have to make sure your stuff is off when you're not plugged in, because what you can end up doing is run these and run your battery down without even knowing, which leads to the first downside is that if you do run these batteries down, you have to reset the system. So this happened to us once when we were plugged in and the power went out in the middle of the night and we didn't even know it. But both of our air conditioners stayed on and continued to run for about 6 hours with both air conditioners. And at some point, all the power shut off inside the camper and we woke up and said, what's going on? The power went out. Once the power came back on, we had to reset the system before we had any power inside the rig. So that's one of the downsides of using an off-grid system, because this is essentially the power source of your camper. You supplement it with source power from the pole, but if these aren't on, you don't get the power from the pole. So in order to reset it, all I had to do was just disconnect the negatives from the batteries and wait about 10 seconds and then put them back on, and that reset the system because the Grow Watt has a low voltage cutoff. So once it reaches that low voltage, it will cut the whole system off, and then you have to reset it in order to start it back up. It'll start up just fine and it'll get shore power and everything as long as there is some voltage in the batteries, which leads me to the second one. And this was almost one that I would have said, do not get this system. But I actually figured it out, right? But I just want to mention it here. If you ever run these batteries dead for whatever reason, you have to supplement these systems with 24 volts in order to turn them on. Now, this shouldn't happen for you because it happened for me, but I had something wrong. This was on the other camper, and I can talk about it more if you want to. But essentially what happened is my system ran dead so much that there was only about 16 volts in the battery, and I know that's bad. Drop it in the comments if you want to tell me how bad that is, but it dropped to 16 volts. It wasn't enough volts to turn the Grow Watts back on, so I had to jerry-rig a battery to start it up. So like I said, biggest downside is that these need to have battery power in order to operate. So that means they won't push through shore power if they don't have battery power, okay? Again, not a huge thing because it has a cutoff, so if you ever run the batteries all to where they die, it'll cut it off at a certain voltage and then you just have to reset it. But just wanted to mention that here because that can be kind of a big one for somebody who's not quite ready. But there's a simple fix for this, and I'll tell you what it is because it is part of something that I want to add to this, okay? So this next downside is a little bit techie, so just kind of stick with me here, but the Grow Watt cannot supplement shore power. So what that means is that if you have like a 15 amp circuit that you have access to and you want to plug it in, but you want to run your air conditioner, the Grow Watt can't take that 15 and boost it up to 30 like some of the more expensive ones can. So what I did to get over this is I actually power most of the critical stuff with one, and I can choose to run it on battery power only. And then on the other one, I can choose how much I want to charge the battery and not run any critical systems, okay? So what this means is that this one here can only run a total of 15 amps if I'm ever in a spot that has 15 amps. But this one can run the full 3,000 watts, so I can actually run 2 air conditioners on just one of these. And essentially what it means is that I can power just about everything that I want, but I just have to make sure one of them is at 15 amps. Now again, it's a little bit techie and it's a little hard to understand, but like the Victron out there has the ability to take like a 15 amp circuit and boost it up and supplement it with battery power so that you can run your air conditioner for a set amount of time using up battery power. So it's not a huge thing, but it is something that I have used and I have been able to figure out by using 2 of them. So just to let you know, each one of these cost about $700 a piece. So putting the 2 together, $1,400 for 6,000 watts of inverter power, and then the ability to supplement and be able to select how much battery power that I want to use at one time has been really, really cool. But that leads me to the last downside of this system, which is that it can get a little bit techie. So I just explained how I was able to overcome that supplemental power situation. And what I had to do with that is actually come in here and change some of the settings. I actually can change how much power is being pulled from the shore power and put into the batteries just with the settings on the system. And if you notice, I have the Grow Watt manual here that essentially tells me all of settings and what I need to set it to. So while it can be a little techie, and I do list this as a downside, having it be techie actually gives you plenty of power. So if you are someone that can figure this stuff out, having this set up gives you a lot of power, a lot of options, and at a lot less money. So if you don't mind messing with some of this stuff, it might be well worth it. One thing I forgot to talk about is how I monitor this system. So I did tell you a little bit about the battery management system and the Bluetooth app that comes so I can see on my phone. But this actually, if you notice this part right here, it has a USB dongle that hooks up into our wireless system, into our Insti Connect. So I can look anywhere in the world how much power we're making from the sun, how much power we're using inside the camper through the internet. So this is actually pretty cool. Now it is a Chinese app and it is a little bit, weird. Some of the, language is a little bit strange, but it does work actually pretty well. And you can go in there and see some pretty cool stats, like some pretty nice graphs of how the sun comes out each day and how much power you're making and how many trees you're saving and all of that stuff. Now, because we built the battery pack and it is a DIY pack, the Grow Watts don't know the state of charge. So it's not a huge deal because we have the Bluetooth sensor in there and we can see what the state of charge is on the battery at all times. But that is just a little downside of the app on the Grow Watt system. Hey, little one, what's up? All right, JJ's here to say hi. Say hi.
Hi.
Hi. All right, Lojo's here too. Where did you guys go?
We went to Quick Trip.
Oh, okay. Nice. Did you get me something?
No.
You didn't get me anything?
No.
Oh, she broke her glasses. That's why she doesn't have her glasses on. All right, now I'm telling these guys all about my solar, okay? Okay, so that's the system in a nutshell. Now, here are some things that I might change. By going through this whole thing, I learned a ton, and by using the resources that I mentioned here, like Will Prowse and his website, and some of the other ones, some of the links below in the description, I was able to learn a whole bunch. But when I was done, I was like, oh, if I would have did this a little bit differently, I might be able to have more wattage and all this stuff. So I thought I'd share that with you too, right here, so that you have all the info that I have right up here. Okay, so one of the first things that I would do is I would look into the efficiency of the solar panel. Okay, so let's geek out a little bit on this. Okay, so the solar panels that I chose are essentially 30 inches by 60 inches or so, and they give me 185 watts. Okay, so as I was looking up used solar panels, I noticed that they have some that are 40 by 80 inches that gave you 400 watts. Okay, so if you run the math there, you get a lot more watts for not that much more space. Okay, now I'm still pretty happy with the ones that I chose because they fit perfectly in that spot. But if I was to rearrange it kind of like a puzzle and rearrange it a little bit differently, I may be able to put more watts up there. It may cost me a little bit more money, but if I was able to get like 2,000 or even 2,200 watts up on the roof, that might be worth a couple extra $100 if you know what I mean. So one thing I would recommend is just keep an eye on Santan Solar on their website and see what they have for used solar panels, and then look at the dimensions of the panel. If you see one that is super, super cheap, it might just be not a very efficient solar panel. So it might be large and only give you 100 watts. And that might be okay if you're off-grid or anything, but if you're on an RV, especially especially the smaller ones, you want to try to pack in as much wattage as you can for the size of your roof. Okay, so that is the number one thing. Now the second thing that I would probably do is research a different all-in-one system. So I really like the Grow Watt. It's really cool, but that one downside kind of bugged me, even though I was able to overcome it by changing things around inside our power panel. There may be an all-in-one system that would allow you to essentially charge the battery and use the battery at the very same time. Okay, so the problem lies in, if you're going to use utility power on these, the utility has to be able to cover everything. So it has to be able to charge the battery and run the load. That's what the Grow Watts can do. And I even went on to some of the forums and I said, hey, this is what I want to do. Can it be done? And people said, yes, it can be done. And I said, okay, tell me how it can be done. And then eventually figured out, no, it can't be done. So there is some miscommunication out there with what these can actually do, but I do think there may be one out there that could do what I want it to do. And if you ever wanted to look into that, and I may even drop a message down to Will Prowse to see if that is possible, but what we want to do is use utility power to charge only and battery power to power the load. Okay, that's another thing I would look into. Yeah, I'm sorry if it got a little bit techie, but that's, I mean, I'm just nitpicking about this system because I really, really like it. And I like how much money it saved me, but I want to just drop it all to you, okay? One thing that I'm gonna do for sure is add a battery cutoff switch. So if you look here, I actually don't have one between the battery and here. This is fused, I have a fuse and everything in there, so it's safe, but I wanna be able to just cut the battery off just in case I do run it down and I need to reset the system. I could just come in, switch, boom, it resets the system. So if you're thinking about something like this, and you do add a reset switch and you happen to run your batteries all the way down to the cutoff point, you can just do that. Simple, overcomes one of the downsides of the system and you're good to go. All right, so the last thing that I might change or research, and this is the one that I can maybe use some of your help, is whether or not I should get rid of the house 12-volt battery. So just to let you know, and one of the reasons why I decided to keep it is because we do have the auto leveling system on this camper, and so it uses that 12-volt battery pretty well, right? So I needed to be able to handle like 30, maybe 40 amps of power coming out of that battery, and if I was to somehow step down a 24-volt to there, I needed to have enough power to actually lift this camper up using the jacks. So that is one of the reasons why I decided to keep it. There might be others that I just can't remember yet, but if you have any thoughts, ideas on what I should maybe do with the 12 volts, drop them in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. All right, hey guys, quick update. We're actually using our solar system right now, and we have been for the last few days. We're here at Center Lake Campground at Custer State Park. If you've been following our channel, this is actually the place where the Insti Connect was born. We wanted to come back here and test it out, but that's a whole different video. But I just wanted to give you an update on how well our solar system is working. So if you take a look here, that's our spot here. There's no hookups, no electricity, no water, nothing here. But we love coming here because it's a pretty amazing spot, right? But when we pulled in here, it was 108 degrees in Rapid City. It was pretty warm here too. So it was really nice being able to have all that power available to us because we ran our air conditioners for a few hours that evening. And actually, Tina and I, we ran our front air conditioner all night long at 72 degrees. And when we woke up, I was very surprised because we still had half battery power left. So it's super cool, really nice to have. Now the weather is perfect, so we don't need to run it, but we are making some great power even with a lot of shade on some of those solar panels. So I couldn't be happier with how the system performed, couldn't be happier with the amount of battery power that we got. And I just wanted to let you know that if you were thinking about doing something like this, I would say that putting a lot of battery in your rig is definitely worth it, because when you're somewhere like this where you know it's going to be hot for like a day or so and you want to be able to run that air conditioning, having a lot of reserve battery power is pretty key. So if there's anything you got from this video, I would encourage you to check out and try to build your own lithium battery banks, because you'll save a ton of money. Then you can use that money in other ways, like buying more dense solar panels, a little bit higher quality inverters, chargers, things like that. Just wanted to give you this update, so let's finish the video right here. So that's it. I hope this video and I hope this walkthrough of our solar system helped you. I hope it gave you a different dimension on a whole different system that you can do to save lots of money, but have one of the most powerful solar systems that anybody's going to see. Just believe me. I mean, I've had this open and people have walked by and said, whoa, what is that? Can I come and take a look? I say, yeah, sure. This is Grow Watts. You know, I tell them all about it, just like I'm doing here. It's really cool to think outside the box and do things that aren't the norm on YouTube or in the industry, because a lot of times if we just kind of think outside the box a little bit, we can end up finding solutions that are pretty cool. I mean, that's basically how we ended up finding and creating the INSEE Connect. If you don't know, we are the family behind the INSEE Connect. It's the best mobile internet router that you can possibly get. It helps you get connected way out in the state parks, all this type of stuff, by using specially designed antennas, ones that I actually figured out while we were on the road because I needed to stay connected when we were on the road. And we met so many people that said, I can be on the road now, but I need a solid internet connection. Having a good, solid cellular antenna can get you connected where there's trees, where there's mountains, just about anywhere. Check out the reviews that we have on the INSEE Connect. If you're interested in staying connected, check out our website, inseeconnect.com. If you have any questions, just drop a message down below in the comments or reach out to us via the website. We'll be glad to help. So thank you so much for coming to this video. Hope this video helped. You hear them in there? I hope this video gave you a lot of cool ideas on how to set up a solar system like this. And if you have any questions on this, drop them below. I will do my best to help. Thank you so much. Hope you're having a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.